my browser screen over there on the Chromecast. Let's fix that. Select source, desktop, projector, your whole screen. Is my computer gonna handle streaming live to YouTube and the Chromecast? Because you apparently can't just do one stream to that and go to YouTube. So I slacked you all this link. These are Gavin's notes for today's lecture. So I'm going to go through these notes and talk about all these things with you all today in lieu of Gavin. And we have a video. So if I confuse you all, slow me down and ask questions, please. Yeah, I'll stand. Yeah, that'll be it. So we've talked about SQL up until now, and you've seen a little bit of sort of vanilla Ruby, just working with the Ruby syntax and classes and objects, I believe, right? Yeah. So we're going to kind of pull those two things together today. We're going to use some Ruby code, some Ruby libraries, in particular, something called an ORM, and even more particular, an ORM called ActiveRecord, that is going to handle the connection to the database for us, and it's going to handle writing the majority of the SQL queries for us. And we will write simple Ruby code that has classes that represent the tables that are in our database. So if you had an application about animals or movies, and you had a table that had animals or movies, then you would have a class called movie, and it would be basically powered by that table. So that instances of that class, because we've talked about classes, right, and instances, instances of that class would represent individual rows in that database. So that's the idea that we're going to talk about today. So we've got a little bit of kind of housekeeping that we're going to walk through. We're going to be doing some stuff in IRB today, which is the interactive Ruby shell. We've talked about that, yes? Yeah, nodding heads, cool. So we're going to make IRB a little more awesome. The first thing we're going to do is gem install awesome prints. So if you haven't already, I'm going to bump this up here. Boop, 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 boop. I'm going to make that full screen. Gem install awesome prints. Now I already have it installed, so it's just going to, for me, like that. It might take a second longer for you. Once you've got that installed, we're going to open up a file that's in your home directory called .irbrc. So the tilde, shorthand for your home directory, /.irbrc. From the command line, we can just write code, and it should open that up in VS Code. Is anyone not using VS Code? Cool.
.irb.
RC.
RC.
Yep.
Okay.
Right there. Code. So I'm going to hop over here and let me show you my IRB. So mine looks slightly different than Gavin's. Go ahead.
It says no such file or directory. Did you make sure you do an underscore? Awesome underscore.
For the code.
IRBRC.
Did you type code space? Oh, are you? You shouldn't have the sudo there. So.
I have to see them.
Are you not using the homebrew installed Ruby, or using the system Ruby?
I think I'm using the homebrew installed Ruby.
We can probably fix that so you don't have to sudo anymore, but just if it's been working, just keep staying on it. You might be in the same boat, yeah. That's the system.
I'm not used to like Windows working.
Can you all type Ruby space dash V? It's working for you. 2.3.
Yeah, I think it's working. 2.5.
And you didn't need the sudo, did you?
I did not. Mine still doesn't.
Just sudo for now. Sudo for now. We'll
SUDO. So
yes, sudo sudo. So just put sudo space in front of the gem install command.
So I did that, but it opened up a window, a file in the project. I was kind of
That's fine.
okay.
So now that you've got this file open, go ahead and go over to Gavin's notes and take the whole contents of there. Reopen it. I should do some syntax highlighting. Yeah. And take the whole contents of this white box, lay down, and just copy paste it. And don't worry too much about what it does.
Where do we find that?
What's that?
Where do we find?
Oh, I slacked it to everyone. It's in the Core 12 channel. It's the last message I sent in that channel. Yep. So once you get that pasted in, you will, and you have that gem installed. If you open up your IRB prompt, it'll look slightly different than it did before. Simpler. And if we do something like this, we get that. But if we do something like class
That in VS Code.
that whole file, that contents of that file, yeah. So
Ruby require IRB completion.
Yes. Yep, the whole deal. This configures a library called AwesomePrint, which makes the printed output from IRB a little better, more formatted. So when you print out like a hash, instead of just coming back at you like, well, normally it would just print back like that hash. We get it formatted nicely.
Mine does not look like.
Yep, that's fine. You're good. Just save that file. Yeah.
No, I know he is, but
He's talking about the file didn't have the syntax highlighting. If you close it and open it again, it's this first line here tells it like, hey, this is a Ruby file. Because this file doesn't have an extension like .ruby. That's all that is. No big deal. Yes, sir.
So if I type in class dog enter and at foo equals bar
Yeah.
enter end, does that put it all in the class?
Yes, that was you basically like the IRB was smart enough to know that like you couldn't possibly have been done typing yet
Okay.
because you haven't ended the class that you started on the first line. So it's allowing you to input multiple lines.
Okay, cool.
So that's all that was. I was thinking the dog object would have printed out a little bit better, but it didn't. But the hash example demonstrates better what I was trying to show. But normally this hash, if I tried to print it out, oops, I'm not in IRB, right? So these objects are colored now, and as objects are more complex, they'll be in the output from IRB rather than just black and white and a dump of text. it'll format them a little better for us.
So now that I found that, how do I find it again? It's nowhere to be found.
The file,
Yeah.
you don't need it again. It's hidden in your home folder. .irc. It just needs to exist. You can type that command again, code slash
So I just need
code.
to create a Ruby file.
Not yet. No, just type IRB. And if your prompt looks like this with just two little carets instead of the other IRB prompt that had a bunch of jibber jabber in it, then everything is working correctly.
I don't think mine's working.
What's your IRB prompt look like?
It's IRB parentheses main colon
Yeah.
0 7 0 1 0.
Are you both on Windows?
I have that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you save this?
Mhm.
And you're in the Linux subsystem too, right? Now you're, right? Yeah, you're in the Ubuntu thing. You are in Linux. So it should
Yours is working?
It's doing the same thing yours is.
Oh, okay.
see. FIRB. All right, you just won't have the formatting. Gavin will, when he gets back this afternoon, will debug that. So you just, for following along, you just won't have the pretty output.
Okay.
If it affects what we're doing later, though, we'll have to dig a little deeper. I don't want to slow down everything too much. So that's set up. So does everyone have in their local Postgres on their computer this movies thing from last week? So you have a database called movies. So I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. See if my memory doesn't fail me here. So PGCLI, actually, I'm still on IRB. So I'm going to create PB movies. I'm going to PGCLI, right? I have PGCLI installed.
Small thing, the bottom line of your screen for screen sharing isn't, like, it's not showing.
Oh, okay. We'll figure that out. So like when I,
It's hardly showing.
oh, look at that. Okay, let me just pop out a full screen and move it up there. How's that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. PGCLI, not hyphenated. That's it. Movies. Oh, not hyphenated. There we go. Should read the whole error message. Oops. Typo. Oh, we're in the movies database. Okay. So what we'll do is run these commands here to create these tables. Okay, that table. That table. That I can tell from the light over my shoulder when the screen is updating behind me, because it's on a slight delay from here. It's bright. A tab, now it's dark.
Listed databases and dash tab.
From in here.
Well, I don't
Yes.
know. I just don't know what I called the movies.
It's not movies?
The movies database.
So if you're in PGCLI, It does look like it is -L, yeah.
And how, you just type in PGCLI to open the PGCLI.
hmm
Should we-
Well, I did PGCLI and then the database name, but yeah.
And you can do the
Yeah, it's just one word, PGCLI. If I say PGCLI.
Unexpected, unplanned.
Are you in your IRB? I have to type exit and get out of IRB. Cool. So I have these database tables completed now, I think. Let me, is it describe the tables? Cast members, I have cast members, I have actors, cast members, movies, and ratings. Movies, actors, cast members. Cool. Let's populate this. So it looks like in this other lesson we have some data to put in here.
Should we do the ActiveRecord thing?
Yeah, go ahead and do that because that's the next thing I do after I put this stuff in.
Do we have to do the special thing before that again? Dylan, sudo.
Oh, sudo. If you had to last time, you will again this time.
I'm sorry, how do, I can't get into PGCLI or,
All right, give me 1 second.
Install
I think you all have this, should have this stuff in your database from last week, the things I just inserted. So PGCLI,
mine's,
maybe this does not exist. Did you call it something else?
I think I called it.
What, SDG movie library?
Oh, yeah, how do I just list?
From here?
Yeah, just so I can see whatever data.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, SDG.
Yep.
So PGCLI and then the top.
Yep, then the name of the database.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
For the ActiveRecord, I got a, couldn't find valid Jim. Try ActiveRecord with no underscore.
Yeah, was that? That's absolutely it. Yes, this is actually a typo. Yeah, the gem name has no underscore.
So like all one word.
All one word. And that's a legacy thing that like it would be nice if they fixed that, but it's been that way for so long. But I often make that mistake because what you're going to have to do is when you require it, you'll require active_record.
Mhm.
The gem should have been called the same thing, but it wasn't back in like 2005 or whatever when the gem was first published, and just it's the way it's been. But the typical thing that you will see in gems is that the name of the gem and what you require have a correlation. And if there's a hyphen, then what you require, if there's a hyphen in the gem name, then what you require is a slash. So if a gem is called like rack cores, like rack-cores, then you'd require rack/cores. Otherwise, if there's an underscore, then you keep the underscore. And that convention, you know, like us Rubyists, we like our conventions, and if we follow them, then we know what to expect. And it's a real like against the sandpaper kind of feel when something like that happens. But sometimes for legacy reasons, we have to deal with it. And so.
So once we're in the movie library, then we type in gem, install ActiveRecord.
No, that's a command from the shell. So you can either open a new shell and run that just right on your command prompt in Bash or Z shell, whichever shell you're using.
I think we're gonna do we're gonna do the code thing and then put the same, just like copy paste, just like before.
Yeah, if, as far as like for this code below here,
Yes.
yeah, we're gonna do that in IRB at first, and then we'll put it into some Ruby files.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, that's okay. So you all should have all of that data from yesterday, right? Is there anyone who has like an empty database for their movie library?
How I pulled up is PGCLI dash what else?
That's also listed. Make sure you're not in anything. Space dash. No,
So the other one?
just
I'm sorry.
So it's worth it that they.
Okay, SCG.
Movie libraries, yeah. So PGCLI, SCG movie library.
I just wasn't sure the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
then that installs globally as the gem, so I don't have to worry about closing that window and going back to another project.
Right, that gem is installed in your Ruby gems now, which is ever present for your current installation of Ruby. I'm gonna
Okay.
sit here. Let's see. Hey. So if you're in PGCLI and you can do select star from cast members and you get back some movie IDs and actor IDs, then we should be good to go forward. See a few heads nodding.
Actors,
Cast members.
cast members.
Yeah, because if you have that, then you must have the movies and the actors. So, cool. So \Q gets us out of there. We know that the database is there and it has some data in it. So let's try to talk to it from RubyLand. So I'm going to go into IRB. I'm going to say require PG, which is the Postgres gem. There's a chance that this blows up because we installed ActiveRecord, but we might have needed to install Postgres too, the Postgres gem. So did this blow for anybody? Cool.
Yeah,
So let's just go to exit, gem install PG. And if you needed the sudo, then go ahead and sudo too. Yep, and I am going to, as we talk here, TV projects, handbook, pull this down.
Another error code.
What was that?
Install PG. Thing. Failed to build native Java extension.
Oh, okay. All right. We're gonna have to straighten that out. That's a good one. That's not one that I can ignore. All right. Let me fix these notes right here. This is gem install ActiveRecord. Gem if you didn't have to sudo, then you're probably in a good spot. So what I'm wondering is why it was you two? So the three of you are in that.
Are you having sudo Joey? I don't know, maybe. I don't think so. I really don't.
Okay. So I'm gonna keep these. If we find any tweaks that we can add to the notes, I'm gonna make it so that get those updated. Shay, do you mind if I get your sign up here? Yeah. So.
Did you write these out?
I did not.
I did not. But my neighbor made them for me like a shit ton. Right, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Shouldn't we just type exit?
Run the Rice
exit
Krispies.
IRB?
Yes.
You should.
It doesn't,
Say,
I don't know, I did,
are you in IRB or are you in
I don't know.
CGCLI?
I did /Q, then I did exit. I was in IRB, I think, and then it says, and I tried to do gem install PG on the framework.
Hit exit again. There you go. You were in a multi-line input situation the first time you typed.
Did you have
So then it was like, I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Now it gives you the regular prompt, at which point you can type exit. So why then? Ooh,
I must have like just been listening instead of like.
At one point in my career, should I understand it? What we're doing right now.
not this part. Oh, at one point in your career,
At what
yes.
point?
In the next couple, at one point. Oh, you're.
Year from now? Okay, I gotta work on it.
So
Yeah.
I just typed it.
This is some like
Three and some.
Unix system food,
Don't know what that is.
IT stuff,
Okay.
like installing software packages and configuring things. It's there's like one flow. There's like 18 different ways to do some of these things, and there's subtle variations in the way our systems are set up. And unless you know all 18 of those, like it's possible to like learn the one way to install things, and cool, that's all it's gonna work, right? Until it doesn't. So, my experience, I could figure out, at what point did you diverge from some particular flow of ways that are all valid,
Yeah.
but which road are you on with how your system's configured? So I'm surveying the land right now, trying to figure out what your setup looks like so that I can figure out what the right remedy is to get everything working.
Cool, thank you.
So it says you have Ruby installed via Homebrew.
I looked at it and I was like, I can't possibly figure out these. I can't do that
Oh, I
myself.
Come back, we've done it.
No would go. No would go great with brownies, right? In case we did.
Stop.
Some nice lecture queso.
Okay.
Wait, they're not.
Fuck.
You have to
I'm sorry.
move that there.
Yeah.
Have it somewhere written in Slack.
Hey, okay. So, type Ru info Ruby. Through you. Does yours work when you do it?
It is not, I installed PG.
I will come back at yours, okay? Okay, so it's spit out some stuff. So the
So
line that we want, right here, I think yours is working.
I think I am. So do I do gem install awesome print?
No, that we did that already. That's the top of the doc.
Oh, that was the first thing.
It was, yeah. This line right here, copy that and then paste that in. So the line starts with echo. Cool. Now open a new tab in your terminal. Type Ruby-8. Okay, so open a new tab in the terminal because it'll reload your shell environment. Now type Ruby-8. So no space.
Hey, I want Ruby.
You set up your shell. Hey, cool.
You got the magic touch.
I do. I know exactly. That was not a new line. So what it did was instead of appending this line here at the end, it appended it to that. Because what that echo line does was basically says, add this string to that file. It's a lazy way of opening that file and pasting that line. It was expecting that there was like a new empty line at the end of the file, because usually most text files like have a blank line at the end. If yours didn't, yours ended with that first line, so just appended it to there. Gosh. So. Yeah, go ahead and gem install awesome print. Go ahead and gem install awesome print again, this time with no sudo.
Yes, do that. Okay.
Is it difficult? to
Thank you very
upgrade
much.
To the ministry,
Which one are you on?
2.3.7. I know Gavin had talked about upgrading as well to 2.5.
That's a lot.
Because
Okay.
a bunch of us were,
Yes, so I thought but you weren't having the sudo.
no.
So you have RVM. Okay. So
Should I
we
code?
can do.
I'm sorry.
It's a Ruby version manager.
You said after a year. You have to probably change. So you're good now.
I know my computer just did a bunch of stuff. but-
That explains what exactly?
No, it's okay. I don't
Just-
know why.
Why you didn't have to sudo?
It just did all this.
Isn't Homebrew just like it helps you install things? It's just a platform.
Just adding the last.
If you need to manage different versions of Ruby at the same time, then RVM is the way to go because it lets you switch between versions of Ruby easily. But if you just want like the latest version of Ruby and you don't need to worry about having 10 different Rubies installed or 2 different or anything,
That was
weird.
weird.
Just brew install Ruby.
I just wasn't sure because Dylan and I both had the same issue where we were creating an app, do some HTML for app stems and it wouldn't do it. So then we reinstalled Brew.
Okay. And it worked.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know
why.
I guess
I didn't want
something got broken. No, this, we might need to switch you to this version of RVM. When this is done, but now let's work out the next situation here.
Okay. There's another one I found last night. It was like 1.75 speed, and it was a car where he was talking about binary and said 0010001 1110.
Give
It
me
was like,
a
I should have tried to I don't know, it tickled me. I had to rewind it like 4 times.
I drew it like 4 times. Love it, love it. So you want to see it? You get G.
Oh, I think I might know.
It's just like people to do something really important, like how to short a That's fine, just superficial.
You're like the administrator. This administrator.
Yeah. It's not just like, you don't say.
I feel like I'm not in the level.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I'm tired.
Who's not tired? Who's not tired?
I can see it.
You know, think about, I look okay?
Yeah.
Do I look like this? Yeah, I'm tired thinking about what we have to do the rest of this week. Like there's what, a JavaScript thing tomorrow.
Preemptive.
Wednesday night, study for interviews. Thursday, Christmas party. And then Friday, interviews. And capstone at some point. Those homeworks and lectures.
It's gonna be a great week.
It's gonna be-
It's actually, when this week is over, it's gonna feel pretty good.
So, we just need
Wait,
some.
are we on
I'm pretty
vacation?
happy for
Wait,
you.
Some
we on
dependency
vacation?
packages and
Oh,
stuff.
I'm off that.
Actually, I feel even so nervous about the Friday.
You're gonna have like,
Somebody's ringing the
wow,
doorbell.
it'll be a nice way to kick off.
I can.
Yeah.
UCLI.
Oh, you're saying it's so now.
Let's get to 55 minutes into it.
Oh, nice.
It'll be for long.
Let's see.
But I'm excited, my header looks pretty good on my thing.
Oh, that looks great.
But overall, I think
I really like that.
Well, you're in a suit, so we're going to, huh?
And then I might,
Okay, so
and
packages
I
are
might
gonna
mix
be
in.
That's right, because we're not on the Windows subsystem.
That was really good.
I should
little stamp here.
find out what packages are
Yeah,
on suits.
this is over here. Oh my god, you already did this before.
Oh, wow.
That might just be my screen, but that is weird.
What color do you want it to be?
It's got it at a certain angle, it's purple.
Yeah.
Oh, it's supposed to be green?
And then the font turns to white.
Yeah, I don't see the white font. I see all the yellow font.
If you're at that angle, it's purple and white.
Oh, purple and white.
Yeah. So if you're looking at your phone like this, maybe it's a little.
The little things, hell yeah.
I think lecture's a bust today, we should just work on our capstone.
All right, what we're gonna do is, let me send you, so Google this for me.
Okay.
PG Gem, Windows, Linux.
Not all of you, just Kenny.
PG
Oh,
Jam,
okay.
Windows.
For you, I need to do a little more investigating.
Okay.
So just watch along.
Gotcha. I'm able to install PG Jam.
Uh,
Was mine working though?
Go back. What was yours working? Did you get Jim install PG and work?
I think so.
Oh, cool.
Let me go back up to
Worst case, I'll just watch the video later.
Yeah, we exactly, and we will sort it out. I don't want to. But it'll be one of the last things.
Is it in here? Yeah, right here.
ActiveRecord.
Does that look like?
Yeah, I can keep going after that. That's ActiveRecord.
Oh,
PG, Gem install PG.
8 gems installed.
Yeah.
This is what I was just doing all night.
Okay, go back out, or just get to a terminal prompt for me. Just Gem install, or you're in /Q to get out of CLI, and then Gem install PG. That's the native extensions. That's the tricky bit. That did not work. Okay, so you two will either powwow with me or Gavin this afternoon. Okay, sort that out. Okay, let's get back to it. So have this, we have our stuff in the database. Let's go into IRB. And I'm going to require the Postgres gem that we just installed and the ActiveRecord library. So these things are both available to our environment now. I'm going to tell ActiveRecord, like, hey, any logging messages that you get, and I'm just copying and pasting from here into IRB, line by line. I'm going to tell ActiveRecord, hey, any logging messages that you want to do, I want you to send them right to my terminal. Don't, because normally ActiveRecord wants to log to a file. You have a log file set up. Don't log to a file, log to standard out, which is my terminal. And then let's go ahead and establish a connection to our database. We're telling it to use the Postgres adapter. That was the PG gem that we installed. And the database that we want to connect to is movies. And it gives us back a big, this is the ActiveRecord connection adapter itself. Ignore that. That's just jibber jabber. For our purposes.
It's supposed to require PG and active.
Yeah, require PG and ActiveRecord. And then,
Still getting.
Yeah, it's giving me errors too.
That was such file.
did you so for the three of you that we just switched updated the Ruby version on, and you, did you gem install Awesome Print, PG, and
No.
okay, the three of you, yes.
I did
Reinstall
Awesome
those
Print.
gems again. Yeah, do the other ones too.
PG too.
Yeah, ActiveRecord and PG. Yeah. Sorry. I think I mentioned it in passing, but I didn't announce it loud enough.
Do I put those in parentheses for PG? Is it just PG?
Gem install PG, just like that. And then ActiveRecord after that.
I did ActiveRecord already, is it? Okay.
Then you're good.
Okay.
So gem install, awesome print, and what else?
PG and ActiveRecord with no hyphen or no underscore.
The latter two are inside IRB.
Nope, all of them from your terminal. Yeah, the gem command is a shell command.
Gem install, PG,
Yep, and it will actually be
and then we require it from within.
yes.
Will we require to leave the underscore or no?
Yes, that's the confusing bit there.
So it's awesome print, PG, and ActiveRecord.
Once those are installed, open up a new IRB and paste these lines right here, these three sections or two sections. Do the two requires first by themselves. Make sure they both returned true or false, or actually it doesn't really matter what they return as long as they don't explode. True, probably. If you require them again, it's going to say false because it's already been required. So it didn't need to require it. But as long as it doesn't blow up, we don't have a problem. So it doesn't really matter what the require returns. We usually don't care about its return value.
I got a name error, but are we supposed to do a different terminal for the new IRB?
I mean, just need to be in IRB.
Should I? You said get a new IRB, so I created a new.
Oh yeah, that's fine. IRB.
So I just did the first line. Was that?
Oh, did you do those? You have to do those first.
I did those on the other one.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yes, have them. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Do it here.
Yeah, paste it in there. Okay. Cool. Perfect. And then the other one.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or just all as one.
Did all
Yeah.
one?
It all works. Yeah. When I meant open up a new IRB, I just meant like go back into IRB and
Okay.
run all that stuff. Yep.
Okay.
So, because every time you leave IRB, everything's gone. It's like anything you've required or anything like that. You can have multiple. They're like separate little silos of information and variables and whatever. So now we've done this. So let's go ahead and paste these two lines in. These are both classes. So we talked about classes last week with Gavin, I assume. Did we talk about inheritance? Cool. So this class movie inherits from something that ActiveRecord provides us called ActiveRecord Base. ActiveRecord Base is a class that has all of the amazing magical code to connect to your database and automatically introspect on your database's schema and do really cool stuff. All we're going to do is just inherit from it and say a class called movie, and then make another class called rating that inherits from that same thing. And then we're just going to see what that gets us. We didn't add anything else to our class. So all the behavior that we're going to see comes from ActiveRecord Base. And our movie class and our rating class have inherited all that behavior. I think Catherine will get that. Let me just go. I see a shadow. No, you're good. Catherine's on it. Thank you, Catherine. So, movie.all. And I didn't do this thing that I told you all to do. Oop, there we go. Cool. Hey, look at that. So what we got back was an array. Actually, what we got back wasn't an array. It was a ActiveRecord query interface that looks and acts like an array in Ruby, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. So we can treat it like an array. So here's the brackets. So what we got was an instance of the movie class, and it already has these attributes that match our columns from the database. Yes.
I think it's
In the, I don't think we called our database movies. I think we
Oh,
called it
yeah,
STG
yes.
underscore movie underscore.
Yes. So when you do your
Okay.
connection adapter, go ahead and exit IRB.
Okay.
And go back in. Do those commands over again, but this time when you establish the connection, right here, change movies to be STG movie library.
Okay.
So I just do the same thing. It's movie all did nothing. So should I just do SDG movie library?
You did not type in after that, so you're still, yeah, so you're gonna get there.
I didn't type end after what?
Go back before you type movie all, so you type class rating, ActiveRecord Base, and you have to end. So it was still like waiting for you to end the class.
All right.
See, like,
Yeah,
verification.
oh, I got you. I'm just doing the Ruby.
Yeah. Yep.
So
When you paste something, it automatically enters that for you?
If you're pasting when you copy it, you copy all the way to the very end. There's an invisible new line character that's the same as hitting enter. So if you copied that, yeah, maybe copy right up until that first quote, and then type the rest out yourself. It's probably the easiest way to do that. And I'm gonna let me see. So
What they say and
SQL. So what did we call these movies? What did we call this database in these notes? Maybe we didn't. So maybe in these notes, I don't know. I'll leave that as a note for Gavin. That this should maybe not be movies here. SCG movie libraries or library is what you all had yours called here, not movies. So like when you PGCLI'd and you type the database name, it should be whatever you called it. So it might be that instead. All right.
So we have to type and after both of those?
Yep.
So
This is just Ruby code, and we're just like if it was in a file.
So it should say both of those and then end it again.
No, it should just be
I might not.
the two ends for the two classes.
No. Did you redo your connection?
You never established your connection. That was where's your notes at? That.
Oh.
So we didn't do this. But no, because I think you were using SDG movie library too. So that SDG movie library. Enter closing parenthesis. There we go. Now you've defined those classes. You should be able to say movie.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there it is.
Appreciate it.
Got it? Got it? Good. How are
I
you?
got it working. She's close.
Do it every day. That is the story of my life. Typing shit wrong.
Like create BD. That's what I was doing this morning. I was like, Mark, I can't understand why I'm doing this wrong. I was like, well, first of all, you didn't type it in right.
Okay. So let's look at movie.first. What's cool is we told ActiveRecord to log to the output. So what we're seeing here is both the output from IRB. So when we type a statement here, we see IRB print the return value of that statement. But the line above this is IRB, is the line with the timestamp there, is ActiveRecord just logging messages to us. So when we typed movie.first, ActiveRecord was like, oh, I need to load a movie. So there's our movie load. It took 0.4 milliseconds. And it said, select movies from movies, order by movies.id, ascending, limit 1. Because we said, like, movies.first, right? So all we did was ask for the first movie. And ActiveRecord's like, cool, you didn't tell me what to sort them by. Like, which is the first one? The first one by date? The first one by whatever? So it defaulted to sorting by IDs. The reason it puts an order in there anyway is just to have a consistent order for you, because if it didn't, then you'd get back the natural order from the database, which might vary from day to day or moment to moment. So for consistency, it's at least going to order by something by default. Let's look at what it did when we did movie.all. So it did two things. First, select one as one from movies, limit 1. I think it's just checking to see if that table exists, right? So ActiveRecord did that once, and it's cool. That table exists. I'm not going to bother checking that anymore. So from now on, if we type movie.all, oh, it still ran that. So ignore that. That has no effect on what we're doing. Main thing, though, is the movie.load. Select movies from movie, right? Just give me all the movies as an array. That's what we did there. Get some of these other commands. Movie.last. So it's exactly the same as movie.first, except we're ordering in descending instead of ascending by ID. So we got Howl's Moving Castle. What a great collection of movies we have in here. Let's find a movie by ID. So the example here says 42. I don't think we have 42 movies in our movie database. But so I'm going to say movie.find. How about 7? What's the movie with ID 7? Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. So we got back just one instance. Look at the SQL query. Select movies from movies where movie.id equals, and then we see some interpolation stuff here. So $1, $2. This over here is just saying like position 1 here is the ID, it's 7. Position 2 here, the limit is 1. So it's just this is just like a SQL version of string interpolation. There's security reasons why it does this. So what else do we have? How about finding by the value of a column? So instead of us writing out a SQL query, select where the title equals something. We can say movie that where the title is Star Wars, and this is going to have to be an exact match. So we didn't get anything back because there's not a movie titled exactly Star Wars in the database. I don't even know if the Star Wars trilogy was in there.
Could you have put title and then the arrow syntax? Star Wars, like title in quotations, arrow, Star Wars?
Yep. So I could do as a symbol, or I could do it as a string. ActiveRecord doesn't care.
Okay.
But let's do Howl's Moving Castle. There it is. Hey. So how about all the movies that Peter Jackson directed? Cool. There's just the movies Peter Jackson directed. If we look at the SQL query, select movies.star from movies where movies.primary director equals, and then interpolation, Peter Jackson. So all I had to write was that using some Ruby code, and it generated the SQL query for me. What gets really cool is when we can start chaining these things together. So here's a slightly more complex query. So in this case, we're going to write a fragment of the SQL query itself. Let me scoop this up a little bigger. There we go. So instead of using a symbol, making a hash where it was movies colon or title colon or director name colon, sorry, primary director, we're using the where in a slightly different way. And we have a string and a value over here. See a little question mark? When we write it this way, it's going to replace this question mark with 1984, right? And the reason it does this is because what if this 1984 came from a variable that came from the user? We don't want to write that, what the input from the user directly into the SQL query. Because what if they did something like, well, first let's see it happen. So here was the SQL query. Select movies from movies where year released is greater than 1984. Do we see that there? So what if we wrote this here? Cool, same result, right? But what if I just did string interpolation here, right? And had like year. And what if year was a variable? Yeah, I gotta write 1984 here and then run that again. So year is a variable. So this is cool. And maybe that variable came from something that the user picked on a form. Like they picked 1984 on a form and sent it to us. Well, what if they modified that form in their dev tools in the browser before they sent it? And what they sent wasn't 1984. What if year was,
Part of the screen is cut. Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
oh,
How did you define year?
I just said year equals.
Okay.
Don't have to follow along with this part because I'm gonna go fast. So 1984 and then some semicolons, right? And then like select star from actors or something like this, right? And then they ran this. Let's see, so we got a syntax error. So what I need to do is change this to a parenthesis like that. That actually form this.
You know,
Well,
the other trick
there is a way to do this, right? Where I could carefully craft this to write whatever SQL I wanted here. And I'm not gonna sit and try to remember all the magic sequence of characters that I can do. But the point is, by doing this, this ActiveRecord is like, because I'm just putting this string in here this way, ActiveRecord is actually trying to execute what I'm doing as SQL. That's a really bad security bug. So SQL injection, that's exactly what that is. So what I'm trying to do here is craft a SQL injection attack. But if I had done this, and I ran it, we get similar output, but look, the error is a little bit different, right? Because what it does is it goes and escapes all the bad characters and doesn't let me actually write my own SQL queries. It just tries to like wrap it up and be like, oh, that was just a bad value you gave me, sorry. So anyway, that's what that's all about. So if you ever see, when we see us doing this things like this, like movie.where with the question mark, that's to avoid SQL injection. The reason we're doing, instead of just writing 1984 there, because this number we don't know. In this trite contrived example, we've just typed the number in here. But in the real world, that number is like probably going to come from user input in some way. Either like they type their name into like the name field, like I'm updating my profile. So a good example of this is
So the question mark kind of eliminates SQL injection.
yeah. Well, helps protect against it. I wouldn't be so absolute to say it eliminates it because you never know. So it's your son's school. We're having some computer trouble. Oh dear, did he break something? In a way, did you really name your son Robert in string parentheses semicolon drop table students semicolon? That's very similar to what I was trying to craft there. Oh yes, little Bobby Tables we call him. We've lost this year's student records. I hope you're happy. And I hope you've learned to sanitize your database inputs. So what we're doing with the question mark there is sanitizing our database inputs. So good old XKCD to the rescue. Okay, so let's see, where are we in our, cool. So remember before when I typed Star Wars, we didn't have a movie exactly called Star Wars. What about like Lord of the Rings, right? We have these Lord of the Rings movies in here, but there's like 5 of them. What if I want all of them back, but I don't want to type out the 5 individual titles? So we can do a like query. Why is my command tab working? There it is. Okay. movie.where title is like question mark. And for the value, I'm going to use these little percent delimiters. Those are like wildcards. And I'm just going to put Lord of the Rings. And I hope it's cased that way. And it is. There we go. We got back all the Lord of the Rings movies. So it's basically saying, hey, movies that have Lord of the Rings in the title. I could have been like, hey, I want all the movies back whose title starts with an S. And we didn't get any. How about H? Because I know we got Howl's Moving Castle and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Harry Potter. Right? So the little percent sign is just a wild card. So I could have also gone case insensitive and said things. And I get back, even though I had a lowercase r in my query, it's a case insensitive where it's saying where it's like that value instead of exactly equal to. So with that, a new movie, Suncoast. I'll follow up with you here in a
So if
second.
we did title like Lord of the Rings, it should have returned everything, right? I'm just returning select one.
Let me see.
I got stuck here and it was
Oh.
saved up.
Control C.
Oh,
Similar spot.
No, I was.
Oh, never mind.
Oh,
I
you
was
didn't
just.
have, you didn't
I
have
was
quotes
trying to
around that.
launch.
Just hit oh yeah, so just go back up. That should didn't work yet. Do that again, but put quotes around the name.
so Control C gets you out of whatever this was, but Control D will get you out of IRB. Cause I don't wanna.
So Control D is end of file, which I think would always exit you out of IRB. Yeah. Control C is like cancel. So you were still, I don't know exactly what it was, but whatever you were typing, IRB didn't think you were finished typing like one statement. So it was letting you continue writing that. Control C was like, hey, just throw away the thing I was just typing and give me my prompt back. If you hit it again while you're at the prompt, it would also exit IRB then, if you were just at the IRB prompt. What was your question?
I'm good. I figured it out.
Cool.
Thanks.
So we also have a movie.create method. This create method basically did an insert for us, or sorry, I already ran it, and here we go. So I did movie.create, and we passed a hash here, passed a hash. Title, STG The Adventure, primary director, Suncoast Devs, year release, 2018, genre code. And check out what SQL statement it did for us. Insert into title, insert into movies, title, primary director, years released, values, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then here's the array of values that it interpolated in. So then what it returned for us is a new movie object. So now if we say movie.last, we won't get Howl's Moving Castle. We're going to get STG The Adventure. That's the last movie that was just put in there. Gavin wants us to delete all the movies after 1984. I'm not going to run that one because I don't want to delete all my seed data. But that would, in fact, delete all the movies. It would run a SQL query. It would say, delete from movies where year released is greater than 1984. Is the SQL query that would run. Or I can find one movie. Let's assign it into a variable. Let's go ahead and delete our STG Adventure movie. I want to find the movie with the ID. Was it 15 or 16? I think it was 15. There's STG Adventure. So now in this variable here, I have a movie object. You can do things with it like movie.title, movie.title, Genre, so this automatically has all the properties. If I
Just
can
did
type.
movie.find ID.
Yeah, so I said movie equals movie.find, and I gave it an ID, and it returned for me a movie object, an ActiveRecord movie object, and using the columns that were in the database for the row that had the ID 15, all of my instance variables in this class and attributes are filled out already with these values.
Because ID is the first thing, you don't need to say ID equals, you can just say 16. Because you wouldn't say ID equals anywhere, but the first argument is the ID by default. 'cause that's
For
how I
find.
put it in, yeah.
That's how find works. Yeah, find just takes the ID. Where is like, I'm gonna write a where query. I'm looking for movies that match this list. So I could write where ID equals 15 and just ask for the first one, and I get back the same result. Or I could just say movie.find 15. It's the same thing. If we look at the SQL query that gets executed, select movies from movies where movie.id is that, order by ID, ascending, limit 1. Here, it didn't bother with the order because I didn't have the where, but otherwise it's the same. Select where the ID is 1, limit 1. So find is just a shorter way of writing out that same thing. There is a subtle difference though. If we ask for a movie that doesn't exist with find, we get an error, ActiveRecord record not found. If we do this, you just get back no error. Sometimes I do that because I want nil and I don't want to have to deal with an error. If I know I'm querying a thing that might not exist by that ID, I might write it this way just to say like, hey, I don't want to handle the error. Just give me back nil and I'll check to see if it's there before I keep doing my code. So subtle distinction. That's because I don't want to error if I'm like searching by title, right? If Joe versus the volcano is not in here, I just want nil back. I don't want it to throw an error.
What's the downfall again here?
Well, your application will stop running and the user will get a big error screen unless you handle the error, which maybe I don't want to handle the error because maybe not finding a result, not necessarily an error, it's just a different state of my application, right? So it depends on how you're coding your application in the end. It's not something we have to worry about too much today. Now, what if, let's look through all of our movies here. So Howl's Moving Castle. What if somebody from our content team comes back to us and says, you know what, that's spelled wrong. Howl is a possessive noun. There should be an apostrophe in the title. So we don't have the right title for this movie. We want to update the title. So I'm going to say movie equals movie.find 14. So here's Howl's Moving Castle. And I'm going to say movie.title is equal to Howl's Moving Castle, right? So if I inspect my movie object again, I see that. That's there. If I just say movie.find again, find movie 14, I'm not going to assign it to the variable, I'm just going to peek. We'll see that it didn't change the results that were in the database. But let's say movie.save now. I did movie.save, and look at the SQL query that it ran. Update movie, set title to be variable number 1, where movie's ID is variable number 2. So variable number 1 is Howl's Moving Castle with our apostrophe, and then we got back true, so it's saved. So if I look at my movie again, let's query it from the database, there's our title has been updated. So that's how we can use ActiveRecord to update an object. We can change the attributes and then just call .save, and it automatically does the updates for us. We could even do something like, find this again. Maybe somebody says, hey, we're gonna start having multiple genres, but because we just have a string field for the genres, we're gonna have you put commas between the genre names. We're gonna just do a comma separated list. So I'm gonna say, cool, that sounds great. So the new genre for the movie is fantasy, anime. And then somebody comes back to us and they're like, we've decided that for legacy reasons and because everyone was already used to searching for howls without the apostrophe, we want to change the title back to howls. Remember I said the story of my life, the typing shit wrong? Howls moving castle. So now if we movie.save, it's going to update both of those attributes in one query. So it changed the genre and the title back. So we can also do, instead of doing those one at a time, somebody came back to us and like, we've absolutely changed our mind. We need the apostrophe back. And I'm saying we need the apostrophe back and we want to just put it in the anime genre. No comma genres anymore. So I'm going to say update and say the title. And I'm passing a hash in now. Howls moving castle. And the genre is anime. Hey, cool. And it ran the update just like before. And all I did was type the one line of code there. I even chained together the find and the update into one statement. So remember that we had the ratings model and we have a foreign key so that a movie has a rating. So if we try to type this into the current terminal session here, I thought it would get upset at us, but apparently it didn't. I thought it would say that the movie was already defined. Totally didn't. Live with that. So where's a movie that has a rating assigned to it? None of them do. But we have ratings.
We have 3 of them.
Checkers has a rating.
Oh yeah. So I probably just didn't update those. Okay. Yours do. I'm gonna go ahead and assign some ratings real fast. So let's go back to Howl's Moving Castle, right? That's still in movie. Let's reload everything. No, I'm not in Rails. Movie is movie.find. Load that back again. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say movie.update rating. Actually, let's get a rating. So rating.find 2, is that PG? Capital R. Rating equals. Cool. So rating is PG. So I'm going to update movie to have this rating. So check out what happened here. Update movie, set rating ID to movies.id. So it used rating ID 2, which was the rating I had, and that. So now if we look at our movie object, you see that the rating ID is 2. Well, let me just say movie.rating now. And look, what I get back is the rating object from the database with, so it automatically does the joins for me. If we define our ratings, oh, it's the very next thing that Gavin has here. If we define our ratings class and we just say, hey, you have many movies. So now ratings are aware that they have movies. Let's look at our rating. This might, yeah, that works great. So what we got back was an array of movies where the rating ID was 2. By just asking what the rating, hey, what movies are rated PG? That was it. This is where we can define some really simple stuff in Ruby and have a data model and then be able to really in a really expressive way, query that data and work with that stuff using some words that are more or less plain English, right? Obviously, the syntax is not English, but the grammar of it almost reads like English. So we're asking this ratings object what its movies are, and what we get back is a list of those movies. Right. Hey, how about this many to many, right? So let's define the actor class so that we can talk about actors. Let's define the cast member class. Now, the cast member class belongs to a movie and belongs to an actor. And if we think about our table structure that we had before, the belongs to goes on the model that has the ID, right? That's the thing that owns the other records, right? Or is owned by, I should say. So, oh, the rating ID is not here in this example. Let's fix that over here. Oh, never mind. It's an alter table there. Okay, cool. If it wasn't there, how is it working for me? Back down here, where were we? Date, joins. So the cast member, because it has those two IDs, movie ID and actor ID, we can tell Ruby, hey, that it belongs to. It automatically knows to look at for the whatever this is _ID. Let's update our actor and movie classes to have these statements here. So an actor has many cast members, right? Because the cast member has an actor ID. And then we can infer then that the actor must have many movies by going through the cast members to find all of the cast memberships here that have the actor's ID and get those movie IDs, and that should be the movies that cast member has. So then we can just say actor.movies and we get back a list of those, and there's going to be a join through the cast member table, but we don't even have to think about that. We're just going to ask the actor what his movies are, right? Just by defining these relationships in this way. So let's do this here. Did I do that one? No, I did not. So I define that, redefine these, although we're going to lose our belongs to rating here.
Where come from?
Shoot. Where did what?
Through?
Through is just added in there.
You just, okay.
Yep. Let me back to this again. Sorry. Belongs to rating. So let's find this movie. So here's our movie now. Let's ask it what actors are in that movie. Oh, Orlando Bloom. We get an array back with just Orlando Bloom in it. If we look at the query that it called, it selected actors from actors, did an inner join on cast members on the ID, where cast members.movie ID equals 9, right? Because that was the movie here. On the left side of that was the movie with 89. So we didn't have to worry about writing any of that SQL. All we had to do was say movie.actors, right? What about the first actor? Orlando Bloom. How about the last actor? Martin Freeman. What movies are he in? Probably those Hobbit movies. Let's ask. Hey. And he was in Hitchhiker's Guide. Ah. Let's get all the movies. We assigned it to a movies variable. Take a look at movies as JSON. Look at this now. Beautiful Ruby hash. What did I want to do? I wanted to say this. There it is. There it is. There's JSON objects representing all of our movies out of the database. So if you were to build a Rails application or a Ruby application, a web application that talked to JSON as part of an API, this is how you could take all the stuff from the database using a really simple query like movie.all. Pass that to something that will generate the JSON from a hash, and there it is. Sneak peek. Cool. It's got some links to the Ruby guides for you all, and I'm sure we have questions about stuff that we've seen. Yes, sir.
So belongs to assigns it to our tables, right?
Belongs to tells this class that there's another table called movies, and Rails is really smart, or not Rails, ActiveRecord, which is part of Rails, but we're just using this part of it. ActiveRecord is smart enough to be able to turn plural and singular back and forth. So there's different places you'll refer to. Remember, our table was called movies, but our class was called movie. And ActiveRecord is smart enough to know, like, hey, when I'm talking about a singular thing, then I mean movie. So I'm saying belongs to movie here. So it says, okay, there's a table called movies, and there must be another class called movie. And I'm going to look on the cast members table, and I'm going to see a movie.id, or sorry, movie_ID. And so that means that this cast member must belong to that movie. And I'm going to set that relationship up. And then it defines on cast member a method called movie that lets me get all of the movies that have that ID, or sorry, the one movie in this case. The inverted relationship here would be on movie, where we say has many cast members. So in this case, the movie table doesn't have the cast member IDs because that doesn't make sense, right? It's the cast members that have the movie ID. So has many cast members says, hey, over on the cast members table, there must be a movie ID. And what you can do is say on an instance of a movie, say .cast members, and I'm going to go query all of the cast members that have this movie ID of this movie here. So it sets up both. This is how we set up both directions of the relationship. In this case, a one-to-many, right? There's also a one-to-one where you can have a belongs to and has one instead of has many. It's actually less common. And we also have a many-to-many, which involves having a third table to do the joins with. And that's it right here, many-to-many, where you do the through to define the. So if we were to look at these here. So a movie has many actors and an actor has many movies. So what we do is we say that a movie has many cast members and a movie has many actors through cast members. Those are the two relationships. And we just define those in Ruby, basically using that, like the way Ruby and Rails likes to work is like to have a grammar similar to English. To just say a movie has many cast members and a movie has many actors through cast members. But we need to define the cast members relationship first before we can say that it has actors through cast members.
So you define an actor class. So
Yeah, the classes represent our tables. So in our application, we have 4 classes. We have a movie class, a rating class, an actor class, and a cast membership class. Those match the 4 tables in our database. And then what we do is if there's relationships between those tables, we define them in the class using these statements here. Has many, belongs to. Occasionally you'll see has one, but it's not very common. Has many and belongs to are the most common ones. And in the case of a many-to-many relationship, you'll use through to define what that join table is that the many-to-many is using, which in this case is cast numbers. It used to be, back in the day, instead of has many through, you would say has many and belongs to, which was super annoying.
So as many is not, we didn't create that. That's
Nope, that's all of that is inherited behavior from ActiveRecord.
Same with through.
Mhm.
Oh, I
Fact.
see. I got you.
If we go look at, so the names here that we're using as symbols, like these things with the colon, the symbols,
Yeah.
those are from our application.
Right.
But these things, the through and has many and ActiveRecord base, are all defined here. So if we go to ActiveRecord associations, it talks about the stuff we've talked about here today. Here's the relationships, belongs to, like I said, has one, has many through, has one through, and then has and belongs to many is kind of like old school. It still has use cases, but you probably won't use it anymore. You'll be mostly using has many through. In fact, let's see what it says to say about has and belongs to. Yeah, so occasionally, so we had to create a class that represented this join model, right? Because the whole idea of a movie having actors, like that thing that sits between them, is an idea in itself, cast membership, right? What if we had a club and a club had many members? Well, it would have many members through an idea called memberships, right? And those memberships might have their own attributes, like what if your membership has an expiration date, right? Is that going to go in the club model? No, because that's relating to a particular member. Is it going to go in the member model? Maybe, but it's not the member that's expiring, right? It's their membership that's expiring. So you have a whole third idea there that is an idea in and of itself. But occasionally you have many-to-many relationships where the thing that goes in the middle doesn't really have its own concept, right? You might have, what was the example that they used here? Was it like cars and parts or assemblies and parts, right? So you might have a lot of different car parts that the company makes. So say they were Volkswagen and we make all these car parts. We also make all these cars. And this car, this particular model of car, uses all these parts. And this other particular car uses all these parts as well to make that car. And there's some overlap, right? So the relationship is these parts can be used in many different cars, and these cars can be used in many different parts. What's the model that goes between those two? There really isn't one. It's just that simple. Like a car has many parts and the part has many cars. I don't need to define this intermediary concept. In that case, you would just define a table called cars parts. And it's in alphabetical, cars parts, and it would have the two IDs and no other attributes. They just have cars parts. And then you would just say car has and belongs to many parts, and on the part model, you'd say has and belongs to many cars. And it would automatically assume that there was a table called cars parts that had the two IDs, the join IDs in it, and it would go along its way, and you wouldn't have to define a model for those cars parts because there's really no idea there. You just need a join date. That's what has and belongs to many is for. It's not that often that you really don't need that join model, and that's why we have has many through, where you define a model to define that middle part. So that's what that's all about. It may or may not come up in what you do. I mean, you might ask yourself, like, is there really a relationship between cars and those parts that we could define as a concept? you probably could find one if you think about the problem long enough, and you could give it a name and it would have attributes like quantity, right? Like what if I needed 4 of these parts for the 4 wheels, but I only needed 1 of these other parts for the engine, right? If it's a 6-cylinder car, then I'm going to need 6 of these parts for the, the pistons. I'm going to need 6 pistons, whereas 4-cylinder cars only need 4 of these pistons, right? So that's an idea in and of itself that we might want to go ahead and add an extra model for. So then we'd end up using has many through anyway. That ends up being the case, I think, like 90% of the time. So I end up not using has belongs to many very often anymore. Has and belongs to many feels like kind of like old school Rails from like 10 years ago. So we've had has many through for so long, and it's usually the right choice. In fact, modeling ideas like that were really difficult before you had has many through. Because like in the memberships example I used, you'd actually have to sit and think about, so if a member is expiring, where do I put that? I guess I'm going to put that on the member model, because it definitely doesn't go on the club model. And but that didn't feel right, because it's not the member expiring, it's their membership. There was something missing, and that's why they added through to Rails. So hopefully I didn't muddy the water too much there with that explanation. So any other questions about this stuff? Tomorrow we're going to see actually putting these classes into a Ruby file and then running it as part of a whole application. Today it's just about, and we could very well take any of these bits of code. Go ahead and just make a exit from IRB. I'm going to go into, you all have a repo that you're using on GitHub where notes are going?
Cohort 12.
Is this cohort 12? Okay. So if I git clone ghost devs, and is it just cohort?
I got it by weeks, so.
But the repo is called that, right? Yes. Okay, that's fine. That's what I needed.
You're recording all this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Look at it again.
This is week 9, right? Why can't I not select that folder? Like not, there we go. Week 09. New file, day. Oh. Folder, day 1, intro to what ORMs. Oh, Mark is working in .NET, so I can call this ActiveRecord. New file. Movies.rb. Cool. I'm going to open up this file here. Let's take all the code that we did today and put it in one place. The first thing we're going to do is connect to that. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom to our versions that actually have the relationships. The movie, oh, we also had ratings, which is not here.
Do you normally define your relationships first?
Yeah, it's one of the first things I do when I build a Rails app, or any app really, is I think about the data model, and then I end up defining these classes first, and then usually I've thought about the user interface before I do this, because that's going to help me define the data model. Then I set that aside, I define the data model, I build this up, and then I start building. So I would have probably already built the front end, and just mocked out all of the data. And then as I start building the back end, this is the first place I start. I build this, and then I build an API that talks to this. And then my front end then talks to that API. And then we have a full stack. So now that we did all that, we can do something like this. Let's just go run this file. CD in the cohort 11, week 9. Ruby movies.rb. Hey, and there it is. It didn't print out very well, but let's do our JSON thing. Let's define a method called JSON. Call it JSON print. I'm gonna take some data. It's gonna say, Gavin, right here. JSON.prettyGenerate data as JSON. Instead of printing that, let's say JSON print. I need to reload. I'm not in IRB.
Pretty generate.
So if I just did JSON.generate, it's built into Ruby. Yeah, there's a JSON library built in. If I just did JSON.generate, it would not have new lines. It would just be like one big blob of text.
Oh. And then you're passing in an argument of data.json?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there we go. So first thing it did was it printed the actors that were in Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, and then it found Martin Freeman and printed his movies, which were all of those. So this is the beginning of a very simple database connected Ruby application. Right? If you were to combine this with, did you all write any terminal applications that do like gets and puts?
Yeah.
So like I think the Safari one, did it like ask you for some input and you, how much time do we have? We have 4 minutes. Let's see what we can do. So we have these models defined now. Let's say gets answer. No, answer equals gets dot chomp. Right? And then let's case answer when it's L, and we will JSON print movie.all, or list all the movies. When it's a print the number, we're going to print that.
B plus.
It's a regular expression saying like if the answer is just a straight digit, and then else
What does the plus mean?
more than one character. So if I put in 14, it's just saying like more than one digit. So as opposed to 1 or 1 4, 1 14. I'm just gonna say puts. I don't know that command. So let's run this. Now it's just waiting for input, right? Because I didn't actually print the prompt. Let's put, or how about print prompt there. Try it again. Well, I have a prompt now, right? So I'm gonna type L, and it printed all the movies for me. That was cool. Let's run it again. And let's say 14. There's movie 14. So what about what about when S, and let's say query equals sequence give me a movie to search for, print space there, and the query is gets.chomp, and then I'm gonna say JSON print movie where title I like question mark query. Let's do a little string interpolation here. Percent query percent.
What is I like again as opposed to like?
Case insensitive.
Insensitive.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So let's also keep this running until we quit. So I think this will work, and then we'll prompt again at the end. I do this loop so it doesn't get into recursion. It's fine. Let's run this file. Oh, we need to do this first prompt. Cool. So I am going to list all the movies. Cool. And now I've got my prompt again. I'm gonna ask for a movie with AD14. There it is. I'm gonna search. Give me a movie to search for. How about Rings? Cool. Here's all the Lord of the Rings movies. What about a movie with AD8? Oh, there's a movie with AD8 and Q, and I've exited. Bye. We really wanted to get fancy here. We could add like a C and then say and title equals gets dot chomp director. What were the attributes of our movie? What else did we have?
Title, primary director, for movie, right?
Yeah.
Year release, genre, rating ID.
We'll add rating ID in a minute. Cool. So we're collecting these 5 values now. So let's say movie equals movie.create. And we'll make a hash. So it's title. Primary director is the director variable. Year released is what he called it. Year released. We called that year. And then genre. And then we will JSON print the movie. Run our little command here. We're gonna create a movie. I want the title. What's a movie? About Joe versus the volcano. Director of Joe versus the volcano was not Spielberg. It was
That was one with Tom Hanks, right?
yeah, it was Tom Hanks and
Zemeckis?
it might have been Zemeckis. That sounds truthy. John Patrick.
Stanley.
John Patrick Stanley. Shanley. Okay, it's fine. I copied it anyway. The year was 1990. God, I would have thought it was older than that. And the genre is rom-com. Just put rom-com. Cool. There, we created our movie. And now if I can ask for 16, there it is. It's in the database. We have a CRUD application. We can't update them yet, but you could see what we could do now using Ruby stuff that we already know how to do, and some new ActiveRecord tricks. We just made a command line interface application in all of 9 minutes. So cool.
What, why did you have to use prompts?
So I made a method called prompt that does all this stuff, and then at the end of the method, I call the method again. That's why we go after we type a command, we get the prompt again, because the method calls itself again, and then I have to call it the first time because otherwise all we did was define a method called prompt. So this first one puts us into the prompt method, and then from there we don't get out of it until this exit command when we hit Q at the prompt, and that actually quits the Ruby process.
Otherwise, you would probably have to run for a while until you type thing.
Yeah, I could have done it that way instead. I could have just said, instead of, actually, yeah, let's get rid of these and then just say while true and prompt. And this will just keep running forever. Every time the prompt method ends, it'll get called again until we exit the process here by hitting Q. So this should work the exact same way. Probably a better way to do it. So 16, there's Joe versus the volcano, and Q, goodbye. So it works the same way. Cool. I'll add these notes. We are still recording. Bye.